So welcome everybody. So I wanted to start, before we actually go into the pranayama sort of settling phase and then into the Tonglen, by reading a little bit from some of the ancient texts that give us a glimpse of our true nature. Because when you work with Tonglen meditation, what can happen sometimes is that the ego gets involved and we go, oh, I can't really work with somebody I don't like, don't really want to bring in their suffering. And that's just the dialogue, the ego dialogue. But when you recognize that you're moving from a place of self, the light at the heart space, it's not really a problem, because you're just processing, changing energy and lifting vibrational frequency. So I was going to start with one of my favorite Upanishad verses. If I can find it again. Oh, the city of Brahman, the sacred song. In the city of Brahman is a secret dwelling, the lotus of the heart. And within this dwelling is a space. And within the space is the fulfillment of our desires. What is within that space should be longed for and realized. As great as the infinite space beyond is the space within the lotus of the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained in the inner space. Both fire and air, sun and moon, lightning and stars. And whether we know it in this world or know it not, everything is contained in the inner space. Never fear that old age will invade that city. Never fear that this inner treasure of all reality will wither and decay. This knows no age when the body ages. This knows no dying when the body dies. This is the real city of Brahman. This is the self, free from old age, free from death and grief, hunger and thirst. And in the self, all desires are fulfilled. So when we're working with Tonglen, we are working from a place of no ego. Otherwise we become attached to, especially when we get to the people that we find difficult to be with, challenging individuals, we attach ourselves to the story around them. And what's important is that we all begin to recognize the true nature of our being within everybody, and then that creates peace in the world. And that's really the ultimate purpose, I believe, of Tonglen, because when you recognize yourself in others, your light self in everybody else that exists, regardless of their biological vehicle, regardless of their politics, regardless of their behavior, it changes your perspective of people, and you recognize a level of ignorance perhaps in some people towards self, or attachment and aversion that creates the suffering. So I was going to read also from here the Radiant Sutras. 77, and then I thought I'd jump over to 103 because they're interlinked. So this is really beautiful, a very modern take on the text. The heart of the universe pulses in all hearts. There is one who is life in all forms. There is one who is joyful in simply existing in all bodies as all bodies. Explore the life that is the life of your present form. One day you will discover it is not different from the life of the secret one, and your heart will sing triumphant songs of being home everywhere. Abandon all these attitudes of wanting to prolong pleasure and avoid suffering. Let the heart be itself and feel whatever is there. Freed from clinging and avoiding, the heart regains its poise and revels in creation. Plunging deep into its centre, discover that the heart is moved by a pulse that is everywhere. So we're going to use a little bit of pranayama and somatic work to feel our centre. Okay, so let's just roll our shoulders first, releasing any tension that might have built through the day. And take a deep breath in as the shoulders go up. Exhale with a sigh. And again. Lovely. Now let's just rotate to the right. Draw yourself around, releasing any tension through the spinal column. And again, sort of checking in with the body vehicle. Breathe in through the nose and notice whether the body wants you to naturally sigh out or breathe out through the nose. So you'll intuitively know what the body wants to do. So rather than being prescriptive, I'm asking you to be intuitive. Lovely change. Go the other way. Notice what's in the body, what the body's wanting in order to release any tension. Lovely, back to centre. Let's free up the spinal column, so a little bit of cat-cow sitting. Inhale. Exhale. And again, just work with the eyes closed. Observe the body vehicle. Lovely, spine nice and straight. So we're just going to bring our hands to the breastbone. And I want you to press down on the breastbone, take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, slide the hands along the chest, so you're actually creating a little ripple in the fascia. And so we're going in through the nose and out through the mouth. As if we're trying to clean the window into the room of the soul, or particle of infinity, whatever you want to call it, the self, source within. Lovely, release. Good, now just with the eyes closed, let's bring our attention to the natural breath before we work into any pranayama. So just observing the natural breath. And as you observe the natural breath, notice there is a presence, observing the natural breath. So beyond the observation of the body, so we're observing the flow of the breath, but what is it that's observing the flow of the breath? Be aware of the expansion and contraction of the torso. And also notice that you have emotions, but you're not just those emotions, because you can observe them. So what is it that's observing the emotions? Also notice that there's thoughts. So the whole process of meditation is not to clear the mind of thoughts, but to actually control them and to bring focus into the object of focus. So just observing that you can observe the thoughts, but you're not the thoughts. So what is it that's behind the body vehicle, the emotions, the mind, that observing presence that is in everyone, every human. There is an observing presence in all animals, different levels of awareness, and there's also an observing presence in trees, plants, to a degree. So just be aware of that presence within you. And visualize this presence as a light. And it's this presence that animates the physical vehicle. So the body is literally just a vehicle for experience. And when we attach ourselves to the experiences and we become either averse to them and we're fearful, or we become attached to them and we cling, we forget and we believe ourselves to, we live in duality rather than actually we forget that we are just part of a greater whole and we're all interconnected. And that's where the suffering starts to happen, because we allow ourselves to be driven by the ego, which is the senses and the physical body. So just observing, noticing how the physical body and the mind responds to the words that are being heard through the sense of hearing. And we're going to start with just a simple breath to bring balance into the biological nervous system, the vehicle. So we're going to work with Sukha Pranayama, which is simply the even count. So breathe in for a count of 4. And breathe out for 4. So we're using the count and the sensation of the breath as the object of focus. And bringing stillness towards the fluctuations of the mind. Good, increase the count to 5. Just be aware of the observation of the breath. Be aware of the observation of any thoughts or emotions. Just simply be the observer, that presence that's at the heart space. Good. Let's increase the count to 6. So remember, as we increase counts, we're not necessarily breathing in for more. We're actually just controlling the process. So we're slowing the breath down, which requires more concentration on the object of focus, which leads the mind into a deeper place of stillness. So it all has a knock-on effect when we learn to control the biological vehicle. So really observe any tendency to rush the breath, both the inhalation and the exhalation. And you can particularly notice that right at the beginning of the exhale, when you're just about to breathe out, just pause for a moment and let it come out very slowly. And you can also notice it at that moment when you've finished the breath out, just stay there in the natural pause before you breathe in. So you're just observing the habit that you might have of rushing, which obviously has a knock-on effect. If we think very quickly, if we rush around very quickly, we create a vibrational frequency that leads to anxiety. So slow it down. Hear the wave-like rhythm of the breath. Just observing from the heart space this experience, the multi-layered experience of the physical body through the senses. But rather than being attached to the sensory information, we're observing it from the heart space. So it's not reactive. So we're observing the flow of the breath coming in and out. We're observing the count mechanism, which comes from the mind. And we can also observe any emotional frequencies that may be there. And we observe them without judgment. We just notice them. And then we might adjust that frequency, a bit like turning a knob on a radio to change the frequency. Just turn it down a little bit, slow it down. And then if you feel comfortable, let's breathe in for 7. So we're just turning it down, breathing in more slowly. And what we're turning down is the noise of the senses. And by turning down the noise of the senses, we lift our vibrational frequency to tune into things that are observed not through the human sense body, but through that 6th sense. Again, noticing whether you feel like it's a struggle, and if it is, just acknowledge that and then slow it down. Concentrate more fully at the tip of the nose. And then we're going to move up to a count of 8 if you're comfortable. So if you're not comfortable, then stay at a lower count. I like to visualize sometimes that the nose is like a tap, like the old-fashioned taps that had an individual turn at the top, and that you're choosing to just let it run out very slowly rather than open it full. So there's a level of control. Visualize that at the tip of the nose. Notice that the sound of the breath changes when we're slowing it down. It's almost imperceptible, the sound. Because as the breath comes in more slowly, there's less vibration against the internal environment of the nose, so it's quieter. Good, we're going to release that count. And I just want you to observe the subtle change of mental energy. So again, we're doing it without judgment, we're just observing that there's been a shift in, let's call it internal noise. And then we're going to work onto the emotional body. So we'll work with Savitri rhythm at a 6-3 count. So we're going to block the right nostril and breathe into the left nostril for a count of 6. Hold the breath in for 3. Breathe out for 6. Hold the breath out for 3. Keep going. So you've got this wave-like structure of breath that is gently soothing our energetic, emotional body. Be aware of really resting in the pauses. The pauses is when the mind becomes still. It's called kumbhaka. Excuse me. Good, make this one the last one. Now we're going to shift over to the right nostril, so block the left. Same rhythm into the right. Breathe in for 6. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 6. Hold out for 3. Keep going. Make this one the last one. Lovely. Now I'm going to bring the hands together in Hakini Mudra, as if you've got a little ball of energy between the hands. So this looks very much like the brain hemispheres. And it's used specifically for that reason, to balance the brain hemispheres. So focus at the tip of the nose. And again, use the 6-3 rhythm. So bringing an emotional balance into the physical vehicle. Make this one the last one. The hands come to rest in the lap. Bringing your attention down into the heart space. Being aware of the observer. And if you imagine that the body is like a lighthouse, and at the heart space is this beam of light, which is our true self, which is eternal, and it is indestructible, has always existed and will never cease to exist. And the light of the heart space guides us home to our true nature. And it also shines out to others. So when we recognize that truth within ourselves, when we know who we are, we know what we are in our heart space, and we also know how we serve humanity, and we recognize that light in other people, we can start to lift the vibrational frequency of the earth. So really feel that light within you. Visualize it. So we're going to start to move into the process of Tonglen. And we give the breath some texture. So as we inhale, we visualize we're drawing in a denser energy, and we give it a colour, a cloudy, grey, sort of graphite-y grey colour as you breathe in. And it comes towards the heart space, but as soon as it touches that light, the light brings it out of shadow, and it illuminates it, and it changes the energy completely. And then we exhale and we send out light. So we're literally just using the heart space to transmute energy. And remember, nothing can touch it. This is eternal. It is indestructible. And we're using our true self, that we know ourselves to be, to transform the denser energy of the world around us and within our own self. So just work with that. Inhaling Visualize that darker colour, and then exhaling light. So if you think of darkness as suffering, you can also think of the darkness and suffering as ignorance, the lack of knowing the truth about our true nature. And all we're doing in this process is shining light into the darkness so we can see everything as it truly is. So we're going to start to work on our own self. So be aware of your body and also be aware of your emotions and your mind of the body vehicle. So you're observing from this light and notice any suffering in all its forms. So how it shows physically within you, how it shows mentally within you, and how it shows emotionally within you. And know this suffering to just be the clinging of the ego. So observe it from the light at the heart space. And as you inhale, imagine that you're pulling this cloud of smoke with all of that suffering into this light. And you're transforming it, and then you're exhaling and filling the body, mind, emotions with this light, which is your true nature. Shining light into our own suffering, which is our ignorance when we believe ourselves to be separate from Source. Source. So some people might call that God or Goddess or Mother, Father, God, or May the Force be with you, whatever you call it. It's just words. I prefer to use Source or the Divine Feminine, but that's just my personal choice. So allowing each inhalation to draw in any of your own suffering and then fill yourself with light. And I want you to add in thinking a smile, because it's very powerful, because we know that we create our world and that creation starts in our thoughts. So think a smile. Notice how open and expansive the vibrational frequency of that thought is within your own body. And get a sense of every single cell within you filling with this light, this higher vibrational frequency, which is essentially Source, and that is love, divine light. Almost as if the whole body is pulsing with this light, and your awareness of your own body is almost dissolved because this light is so bright. So we're going to do 3 more breaths. Really focus your intentions on releasing the suffering from your own body vehicle. Lovely. Now let's move to a loved one. So just notice how your mind might have a few people to start with that come immediately to mind. And I want you to bring those person one at a time into the heart space and feel. And intuitively allow yourself to feel into who the right person is for you to work with tonight. So you can work, if you can hold more than one person in your mind at the same time, then that's fine too. But just somebody who is really easy to be with. So it could be a family member, could be a friend, somebody who's really easy to be with. And then bring them to mind and really visualize them. Notice perhaps what they're wearing, notice where they are, and just take yourself to sit with them energetically. So we know that everything that exists in the physical universe, so prakriti, is interconnected, and it's just different vibrational frequencies in flow. So bring your full awareness to this person. Really sense yourself to be near them. And as you look at them, notice how the body vehicle shows suffering. So it might be obvious, it might be physical suffering, and you can see the pain. It may be more emotional, so look into their eyes and notice their emotional, mental discomforts. And then start to visualize this cloud of smoke pouring out of them to sit between you and them. And this cloud is simply a representation of that denser energy vibration that creates suffering when there's a lack of connection to our true self. So be aware of that pouring out. And when you feel ready, we're going to breathe it into our own heart space, draw it into that vast light within you. See how it automatically transforms. And send out light to that person and the genuine wish for them to be free from suffering, to feel a connection to their true nature, to feel connected to Source, to experience love and joy, compassion. And notice each time you inhale that cloud, there's a sense of expanding your own heart space. So the more we draw in, the more we expand. And we're pulling up vibrational frequency. And expanding our awareness. And start to notice their face, notice their body for any subtle changes as you start to transmute this heavier energy of suffering from them through your heart space, through the light. Lovely. Now let's do 3 really well focused breaths. So you can see them, you're drawing that energy towards the heart space. You feel how it expands your own light. And as you exhale, you feel that connection because you recognize that light within the other. Lovely. Now we're going to move on to somebody who we find it difficult to be with. So I find this the most transformative way to practice Tonglen. It really it can be challenging at first, but remember, as soon as you feel that challenge, it's the ego kicking in. So I want you to bring to mind somebody that you find it quite difficult to be with, and that could be a loved one. It could be maybe a friend that there's been a disagreement with. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's a personality on the television. Just take your time, allowing your heart space to choose the right person to be with. And then start to visualize them, imagine them, notice what they're wearing, and also be aware of that behavior that you find challenging. And really observe it from a distance, just observe it to start with. So remember, this is not to say that if this person has done something to create suffering within you, that this isn't, we're not forgetting that, but we are forgiving it because we recognize that this biological vehicle that is in front of us now that we're working with also has that light within us, just like we do. But there is a lack of connection, which is what creates the suffering and the behavior. So if you see their behavior, whatever that is, as an expression of suffering and ignorance, you start to be able to step back from their behavior and be less reactive. And in doing that, we create an energy vibration that has a knock-on effect. So we're not perpetuating violence or anger, whatever that energy is that is challenging. So when you feel ready, become aware of being perhaps in the same room as them. Notice any physical, emotional or mental reactions that your own biological vehicle is having as you do this. Just observe it. So rather than analyze it, observe it and notice it to be the story that continues to be told. And then see this person suffering. You know, if this person has an angry face or points the finger all the time, these are just examples. That type of outward behavior is aggressive, and it also shows an inward suffering from a place of anger. So just observing it for what it is and not being attached to it. And start to see this cloud coming out from this person. Remember that your heart space is your true self. It is indestructible. And when you're ready, breathe in this heavier frequency of energy and let the light shine into it to completely transform it into light. And send out that genuine, heartfelt wish for them to be free from their suffering in all its forms and to find inner peace. So that vibrational frequency will change them, alter their behavior, and have a knock-on effect to everybody else. Be aware of that light within the person at their own heart space. So it might be very clouded, but there is a light there in all beings. That is the light of Source. Have a sense of breathing out the vibrational frequency of peace. Notice when you think the word peace, it has a particular vibrational frequency. And again, think a smile, genuinely smiling, and feel the warmth of that smile moving out towards the person you're working with. And notice that your observation of that person has changed. Maybe you're able to give yourself distance from them and be less reactive. It might be that next time you see them, you behave in a different way. Or maybe you choose not to see them, and that is your choice to walk away. So just observing everything that's there. And remembering that we cannot change other people's behaviour, we can only change our own self. Our observations of our own behaviour. And when we do that, we change our own vibrational frequency to a higher octave, you could call it, or a higher chord, which changes the people who we encounter without us actually having to say anything, because we're not reactive, we're just observational. Let's do 3 more really well focused breaths. Lovely. Now I want you to work with a familiar stranger. So just somebody who you might see on a regular basis, perhaps passing your house, waiting at a bus stop, on public transport, I don't know, when you're out walking the dog. Somebody who you recognise, but you actually don't know their name, and but they're familiar. And again, as you notice them, notice that they too have this light within their heart space, just as you do. Just really connecting to the light at the heart. And again, recognizing this person's suffering, seeing it on their body, in their face, particularly around their eyes. And as you inhale, drawing in that heavier energy, which we may choose to label as suffering, feel it being transformed by the light, and exhaling the light. And having a genuine wish for that familiar stranger to be free from suffering, to have a sense of their self at the heart space, a connection to source. Thinking that smile and sending out that lovely warm energy to that person. Using the inhalation to draw in and transmute the heavier energy of suffering into the heart space. Feel the heart space is really expansive now. So when we draw in that heavier energy, it really just acts as a fuel. It's a bit like when you put coal on a fire. It's quite heavy, it's quite dense. And then the heat of transformation really changes it into this fire, which glows in a light. And that's what we're doing here. We're transforming energy. Lovely, let's work with 3 more well-focused breaths. Lovely, now let's work with each other. So I want you to imagine that we're all sitting in a huge circle, so wherever we are, we're in a big circle and we're connected, because our heart space is so expansive now, it's beyond the physical, biological vehicle, expanding out, 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 until it touches each other's light. And let the hands just come gently upright, as if our fingers are touching. So remember, the hands are an expression of the heart energy. So we're extending our heart out to each other and recognizing the light, our light within each other, which is what Namaste means. And holding each other in this light, being aware of each other's suffering in all its forms, emotional, mental, physical, and also that suffering where we lack connection to spirit. So when we are more driven by ego through the senses, be aware of that. And let's start to transmute for each other. So inhaling any suffering, let it act as that coal on the fire. And the fire is source energy, which is pure love. Sending it out. Notice any sensations in the hands as the energy starts to become more dynamic. Feel our connection to other through the heart, through that connection to source, that understanding of the presence inside the vehicle. 3 more breaths. Okay, now start to push your light, your awareness of this beautiful light of eternity at the heart space. Push it out so it incorporates neighbours, the community in which you live in, maybe the village, the town, the city, wherever you are. Let your awareness encompass it like a huge tidal wave of light pouring out, expanding, expanding. Let it fill the entire country. Feel it wrapping all the way around the globe to encompass the whole of planet Earth. And we're holding this space between all of us. Imagine that we're pulling our circle outwards, so we're expanding out until we're all sitting around the globe, holding it between us and holding all beings in light. Every human being, without judgment, just holding them in light. All beings, all species, the planet itself and the oceans, the trees, all animals, just holding everything in light. And allowing the inhalation to draw in any heavier energy that's denser. Let's free it by bringing it into the light. Sending it out into the world with a smile, feeling the warmth of that higher vibrational frequency of light. Feel that sense of peace within your own heart. So we can only ever truly have peace if we have peace in our own heart. Sending out the vibrational frequency of peace. Sinuasiatarias kurotwaha. Isyunurutushkwana aryesia hateke. Ishwarayanananasia atakaryanushkukuru. So just recognizing this light. Chishukurutushkwana aryesia nanatakasietekaha. Feel the frequency of the light at the heart space. Shinu ush watakakarya no ura. Ibriana nasia ta 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 ka. Ish kwayana na 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 nasia ta ta ka. Letting go of attachments and aversions. Shinu uru shinu kokwana na barietes yana no tush shunu no tutukwa yana na nasia ta ta ka. And feeling that true source, that connection to the light that animates the biological vehicle. Shwina abriatus yunu tukusyunu tukusyunu hrusini wana na kabriete siaha shwushunu urotus yunu wana na katayana. Lovely. Now bring the hands into your own heart space, just one hand on top of the other. And breathe deep, feeling a connection to source within the biological vehicle. To that particle of infinity. Let the hands come to the heart space. Once again, become aware of the physical body as a lighthouse, a beacon of light for yourself, but also for the world to share with others, to recognize within others. Inhale, sweep the arms all the way up. And as you exhale, draw the hands down through the midline. And namaste.